All right, welcome back to the rant, brought to you by the Heldridge Hotel. I mean, we barely have time to record this. The portal is spinning so quickly, so much news to cover. By the time this podcast is over, I predict we will have even more news that we'll have to talk about. But for now, Brian, we got a quarterback, a new quarterback, the worst Terrell Owens impersonation of all time. But tell us about Dylan Lonergan, our new quarterback in Piscataway.
Well, it's good that you're not doing the full Terrell Owens and crying on the podcast. I don't know if I could handle all that emotion.
I could try. Let me see if I can muster some tea. Nah, I don't have it.
I just had lunch. I'm not really trying to ruin my lunch. Dylan Lonergan, a former four-star quarterback who has SEC ties, was handpicked by Nick Saban, was one of the last quarterback recruits Nick Saban brought to Alabama in his legendary career. Played at Boston College under Bill O'Brien, who was the OC at Alabama when he committed to Alabama, then became the head coach, went to BC. Up and down year last year at Boston College, was the starter, got benched, started again, had a really, really, really good start, had some really bad games, had some games in between. I guess the one takeaway I have is that he's accurate. His accuracy numbers are really good. Okay. I don't know, and we can dive deeper into the comparison with Ethan and to some extent AJ. We have less data on AJ, obviously, but I think my immediate quick thought on it is that he's going to be a better intermediate short passing player. He seems to really be good at those kinds of throws. I'm not quite sure how he compares to Ethan throwing the long ball, but considering how good Ethan was at doing it last year, I think that's going to probably not be as good. But right. I think the big takeaway here is that Rutgers is going to have a legitimate quarterback competition for the first time since Ethan and Gavin.
Right. And that's obviously we know how that didn't last long between Ethan and Gavin. But look, competition is good, and I can't imagine getting a player that fits what they need more. Right. Like they weren't going to get the top level quarterback in the portal for money. The fact they have a guy established, the guy they wanted to bring along, is not, you can't guarantee him a starting job. A million reasons why they weren't going to get that level guy. This is the next level guy, as far as I'm concerned. He's the guy who started a lot of games at the college level, threw for 2,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 66.9% passing, which is pretty good. I think that's a good competition. Like this is not a fake. You're bringing in some guy from Temple, just throwing a body in the room. Like he's a really good player. I mean, I think this drives back to the point that they could not do what they did with Gavin Wimsatt in 2023, which is enter the year with a guy they believed to be the quarterback. They didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to, create competition where there was none. They wanted to give him the job, anoint him the starter, and it backfired. He was not good enough to play at the Big Ten level, held that team back in a lot of ways. Greg Schiano's not making that mistake again. AJ Surace might win this job going away. We don't know it, but at least he's going to win this job.
Yes, a lot to go off there. I think a little bit different situation. I think he learned that lesson when he brought in Ethan Kaliakmanis after the 23 year, right. That despite Rutgers making a bowl game for the first time in a long time, him being the starter, he wasn't satisfied with that and wanted to upgrade the position. I do think there's some parallels here in that even Lonergan to Kaliakmanis, who both of them were highly touted quarterbacks who started their careers at good schools, didn't really pan out how they wanted. The potential is there, and now they're coming to Rutgers for a bit of a reset. And in Lonergan's case, probably hoping that he gets the same of what Kaliakmanis did, which is that Kirk Ciarrocca revitalized his career. Ethan Kaliakmanis talked about him feeling like a bust when he got to Rutgers, and Ciarrocca really took the most out of his potential and made him one of the best quarterbacks in program history. The difference between the Ethan and Gavin competition, the way I see it, is that point there was a spring transfer portal window. So there was some urgency to decide the quarterback competition after the spring so that either one of them had the option to leave if they wanted to, right? Rutgers probably didn't want that to happen. They'd prefer a situation where you keep both of them, but it was the right thing to do for Gavin at that point. This time, there is no spring portal window. This is the only spring portal window, and my understanding is that AJ Surace is going to be back next year. That is, it's going to happen. It's confirmed. No concern on that end. Dylan Lonergan is obviously going to be here, and that's why this is a win for Rutgers, because no matter how the competition shakes out, the quarterback room is in a better place than it was yesterday. I think personally for the health of the program long term, it's probably best that AJ Surace is able to win this competition, that it's a high level competition. AJ Surace wins. But if Lonergan wins, you still have a good quarterback with a competent backup, which is something we talked about them needing, and something that I will hand up and say, I was wrong. I said this was not going to happen. I was pretty adamant. Obviously, I changed my tune a couple days ago with the information we've gotten and the comments Greg Schiano has made. But the Rutgers thread the needle. They found the quarterback that fits, making it a healthy competition that is talented and bolsters the room. So kudos to Greg Schiano and Kelly's in for being able to get the money and being able to do this.
Do you think it's still Surace's job to lose? And I've gone back and forth on this. I don't know that I have the answer. Like I get it that while he started at Boston College, he was benched a couple of times, but that was a bad Boston College team. Like it's really hard to judge a quarterback on a team like that. 16th in the ACC, 2-10 overall. Obviously they like what they saw on tape from him. He's got more experience. He's an older player, highly touted guy coming out of high school on his plus side. But on the other side, Surace has a couple of years now in experience in the offense, even if he didn't play. He certainly will have a head start on Kirk Ciarrocca's offense. I think that matters. And I also think Greg Schiano, if he had to pick who he wanted to win the job, I think he's pretty sure he'd want AJ Surace to win it. So it's fascinating. Like I don't know I have the answer to whose job it is right now.
So how I would break it down between the both of them is that each of them have somewhat of an advantage. AJ has the advantage of being under Kirk Ciarrocca's system for 2 years. And as Ciarrocca himself has said, that it takes a couple years to master the system. So he has that advantage. Lonergan obviously has the advantage of having college football experience, having starting experience, having been in quarterback battles. So there's that. On Lonergan, I agree with you that there just was not talent around him. His offensive line was horrendous. He got sacked 15 times last year. And his wide receivers, he didn't have Ian Strong and KJ Duff. Let's put it that way. If you look at his accuracy numbers, which are already good, his adjusted completion percentage, which accounts for drops, his receivers dropped 9 passes last year, and throwaways, which obviously happen when you are getting pressured and you have to throw the ball away, his adjusted completion percentage was up to 74.3%, which is better than Ethan's last year, which was 70%. So again, accuracy is a big deal here. Our understanding is that AJ, one of his strengths is also accuracy. So I don't know. Again, I think for the betterment, for the best case scenario for the program is that AJ Surace wins it because it shows you could develop a quarterback. It shows that he is on the track to filling up to the potential that we've heard about for years now since he's been in the program. But I don't know if it's a surefire thing. Greg Schiano has been pretty adamant twice this offseason that this is going to be a competition. And I think if AJ Surace was, what's the word I'm looking for? Leaps and bounds, the obvious candidate for the starting quarterback position, I don't think there would be a competition. Right. So I think that he's going to have to earn it. And again, ultimately my takeaway is that no matter who wins, the quarterback position is in a good spot here and they have depth, which they didn't really have. I mean, they had last year to an extent AJ, but it wasn't proven depth, if that makes sense.
Right. And I'm comfortable in saying this, this is not going to be one in the spring. I'd be very surprised by that, especially with the fact that there is no spring portal. There's no incentive to let one of the guys, like they did with Wimsatt, let him go someplace else, get a chance to start, which Greg Schiano did not have to do, but I think he recognized he kind of owed it to Wimsatt. And it would also be a distraction having Gavin on the roster once the job was clearly Ethan's very early on. I don't think that's going to be the case here. I think this is going to go into the summer, and it should, and that's good. Keep it going as long as possible. I don't know if it's going to go up to game time decision Greg Schiano before they open the season, but certainly wouldn't surprise me if it lasts for a long time. He's got to get this right. This is an important situation, and there's also a chance this is something they haven't had to do. They could play 2 quarterbacks too. It's never an optimal situation, but at least they have an option here. They have this is an important player to add to an offense because I believe this from the start. They could not go into the year with that little of experience at this position in this league, in this year when it's such an important year for the program for Greg Schiano. I just couldn't see it happening. They got that guy, which is the first peg. And we talked about this obviously last week. Friday night, we had a little YouTube video if you watched it, but they had obviously the other 2 pieces to the bigger pieces to the puzzle. getting KJ Duff back in the fold, getting Antwan Raymond back in the fold. Ian Strong's out. We kind of felt that it was going to be a long shot to get all three of those guys. You have to feel pretty good where the offense is. There's still some uncertainty. They'll probably get another wide receiver, I'm guessing, maybe some more line help. But for the most part, that's it. That's the offense.
You got the foundation that you needed, right? Like you absolutely had to get two of those three guys back. You got a running back, a star receiver that you can count will really help your quarterback. Which, just to go back to your earlier point, two things. One, pat yourself on the back a little bit because you were right about this and I was wrong. You should be spiking the football a little bit on me. I kind of feel
I'm gonna
that.
spike it on you. We're a conversational podcast. We don't have to run up the score here. No one keeps track of these things.
No one's keeping track that you're right. That you're 101 to 5 against me and being right. But the other thing is that I think you hope this goes to training camp and deep into training camp, because the reason it ended in the spring between Ethan and Gavin is that Ethan was just so much better than Gavin. And you hope that AJ and Dylan are at a roughly similar level. Again, that would be ideal. So they're going to try to get another wide receiver. They have a Utah State transfer. I have had his name up. I don't have it anymore. I don't want to mispronounce it, but he is very much in the Ian Strong mold, 6'4", speedy guy. If you get him, he visited Wisconsin before Rutgers. He's currently on a visit to Rutgers. If you get him, he fits in like a glove for that Ian Strong mold. His name is Braden Pegan. He started his career at UCLA, had a big year last year at Utah State. They'll certainly look at many other positions. The first four guys they've added outside of the quarterback haven't really been splash guys, and I know we'll get questions about this later on, but I think that we're still early on in the portal stage where Rutgers hasn't gotten the guys yet that will fill in the major roles. Because while you want to get the guys that are going to play a lot next year, you also have to fill in spots on the depth, developmental guys, etc.
Right. Yeah. I think offensively we've got the guys. Defensively, it's a different story. Offensively, I think it's interesting. They will, if they add another receiver, they have to feel good about the depth at that position, including a couple guys coming in like that. It might be the most deepest position group on the team, probably. They feel good about the depth of running back. I can certainly. I know they're bringing in guys on offensive line. A guy played for Jim Turner, the new offensive line coach who trained with him and from Texas. I saw that name. But for the most part, I think they think 4 of the 5 spots on the offensive line are pretty solid. Maybe they get another tight end. I don't know, but I do think that's good. That's a good sign. This offense was good for the most part last year. You don't know how the quarterback position is going to shake out. You don't know if someone can play at the level that Ethan played at, but you feel good about this. Even losing Ian Strong, even losing a guy like that, who might command, he's going to command a big fat payday, but it could be from Notre Dame, apparently. Like that could be. So you're not losing him to Montana State. You're losing a guy at the highest end of the sport, and you're keeping a guy in KJ Duff at the highest end of the sport. I think that was very important for the program overall to go in the season, for the narrative of it, to know you can keep your number one target, and they did. And I give Greg Schiano a lot of credit for that, and I give Kelly Zinn a lot of credit for that.
No doubt. So to answer the filling in the spots, they know quarterback. They're good on running back, right? Barring a transfer, which I don't anticipate from Jashawn Benjamin. Their offensive line is interesting, right? Because you're right. They have their right guard back in Kobe Asamoah. They do have some tackles between Tyler Needham, Taj White, Ryder Langsdale. We have to figure out who's going to play where, what the rotation is, but you have bodies there. Dante Chin coming back. You could slide him in at left guard. You could play him at left tackle. The center spot is interesting. Hank Zielinskis, the younger brother of Gus Zielinskis, he redshirted this year. Is he going to be the guy? It feels like it, but you never really know until you go to training camp. That's not exactly a pen in decision. But the offensive line, I feel like you have enough bodies there that you can, Jim Turner could figure out the configuration there. Well, yes, I do expect them to add at least one more tackle. The guy you mentioned, Braden Pierce at Tarleton State, worked under Jim Turner as like a personal trainer for years. So there's that connection. Tight end, they will add at least, I shouldn't say at least, they'll probably add 2. That's the number I'm hearing. They're replacing Colin Weber and Kenny Fletcher. They're probably going to need, a depth guy like Colin Weber. That's going to be more of a blocking guy, and then a receiving threat like Kenny Fletcher. And then at wide receiver, I think they're solid. I think they have enough guys there that you have your top level guys in KJ Duff. You're going to get a transfer, I think, to replace Ian Strong. And then between Elias Koch and Dysere Carter, the freshman coming in, and the other young players in the pipeline, you're going to have enough guys that are going to be able to make plays.
All right, let's shift to the other side of the ball because that's where they added the most players. Malachi Davis. What, Malachi? Good grief. Malachi Davis, defensive end at Toledo. That's a malarkey. Mispronunciation there. I'll get it right. Zamir Dawood, cornerback. Nova. Jaden Lee. This just in. Jaden Lee just happened just before we started recording. 6'3", 310-pound defensive tackle transfer from Maine. So Toledo, Nova, Maine. Obviously, they're getting guys at a lower level. What are your impressions of those three acquisitions?
So I would say that for the quarterback out of Villanova, who's from North Brunswick, he's the kind of guy that, years ago would probably play at a group of 5 school, but because of the transfer portal kind of, and guys coming back, the talent kind of shifts down a level. So he goes to Nova, he develops, he comes to Rutgers. He could very well earn a starting spot. I don't think that's a guarantee by any stretch. Rutgers is going to try to get more corners out of the transfer portal, but he'll be a guy that competes for a starting spot. Jaden Lee, guy from Maine, he has a redshirt year, so that's interesting, always in calculation. If he's good enough to play, he will play, but you always have that kind of in the back of your pocket that if you want to stash him for a year and help him develop, that option's there. And then Malachi Davis, he played at Toledo, but Toledo had one of the best defenses in the country. Their defensive coordinator went to Syracuse, and their coach is now the coach at UConn. And Davis was one of the most – they had a pretty decent defensive line rotation. He played the most snaps, I think, of any defensive lineman. Good numbers. I'm weary only because of what we saw last year between Eric O'Neill and Bradley Weaver. Had really good numbers at that level. Bradley Weaver in the MAC, obviously. Eric O'Neill in the Sun Belt, which is, I'd say, probably the same level. Let's not assume that he's going to make that jump from the MAC to the Big Ten, but he won't be the only edge they add. They're going to add at least 1 or 2 more because they need bodies, and they need production. But I think he's a good start, certainly. I don't know if he could be your number 1 guy, but certainly if you have 1 or 2 guys above him and he's part of a rotation, I think that's a really solid start.
Are we surprised he didn't follow Coach Syracuse?
That's a good reflection on Rutgers, right? To be able to snag
or,
him.
Or negative, or that they didn't want him. I don't know.
Well, Rutgers beat Nebraska and Michigan State for him, from what I understand, and Syracuse. So I think that level. Yes, this was not a case of a coach not wanting the kid. I think the coach wanted the kid, but Rutgers was able to convince him to. It's a win for Rutgers.
Okay. The one thing we do not know, as the portal is open, still no defensive coordinator. We don't know who's going to coach these guys. I get the sense, though, and this, we've said this before, but I get the sense that this is going to be resolved soon. A lot of feeling around the program that the end of the NFL season was the significant shoe that had to drop, that Greg Schiano was targeting someone in the NFL. We've heard a few names, none of them solid enough. I don't think we're going to try to report them. We're wrong. But, that to me would, be an important piece even now, since the portal is open, but, as you mentioned, had not yet really shaken out to the point where the big guys are gone. Do you think that would help obviously resolve some of the questions there? Would it make a difference, or at this point does it matter?
I don't know how much of a difference it would make. I'm sure it would help for people to know who would be coordinating the defense, but the most important thing here is money, right? For 99% of the cases, it's how much money can I make at this school versus that school. Everything else is kind of marginal compared to that. I think that so the portal works in waves, right? There's this initial weekend where, guys were on campus the first day the portal opened. It's not like they got a call at midnight and decided at 8 a.m. to fly to Piscataway. These things are kind of, arranged weeks at a time. So the first 3 or 4 or 5 days are kind of those initial waves. Teams reassess over the next few days. And then I think there will be not a lull, but a little less activity in the middle 10 days before, or the middle 7 days before a mad dash at the end where everyone's trying to, late entries and guys finding spots. So I think if you could fit in a guy over the next week or so, then you're in position to, at the end of the portal cycle, when you're doing that last second reevaluation of where things stand, to really ramp up. We had our understanding, was that NFL experience to some extent was important to Greg Schiano, during the search. I think there's some thought that you're creating a brand new defense, right? And that's more of an NFL thing than a college thing historically, right? Where you're bringing so many new pieces and trying to assimilate them all to playing your brand of defense. So I think I would be surprised if Rutgers did not end up with a guy with some sort of NFL ties, NFL experience. And we'll see, because Rob Smith was officially fired a month ago today, I think, or yesterday. He was unofficially fired probably weeks before that. So Rutgers has been in the market for a DC for a while now. This thing is dragging on, which shouldn't be a surprise considering the history of Greg Schiano trying to find coordinators. But it does feel like we're at a point where it's got to end up finishing soon, or else you're going to end up in another Rob Smith situation where it's the last girl at the dance.
Right. Yeah. And it is fascinating to watch just how the sport has allowed this to happen with, the playoff ongoing, the portal open. Indiana, can you imagine trying to cover that team? They had an incredible first couple of day portal haul while getting ready to, the odds on favorite to win a national championship. It's just wild to kind of watch it happen. But yeah, that's the sport now. There's no other way to put it. And it's good to see that Rutgers, after having some significant issues getting to the point where they can compete, are competing for players in the portal.
Kurt Cignetti is leading an absolute machine. Legit, really good portal hauls. They got the kid from Michigan State, the wide receiver, who's really good. And I guess the other thing that stuck out to me is teams that spent a lot of money. There's this idea like, is there going to be donor fatigue? Texas Tech spent an unreal amount of money, lost in the first round of the playoff. So what did they do? They spent more money. They spent $5 million on a quarterback who, by the way, was the starting quarterback for Indiana when Rutgers beat them in 2023. Could you have imagined,
really,
when you were sitting in that press box, that opposing quarterback would end up playing at Texas Tech for $5 million 3 years later?
What was his name?
Brendan Sorsby. He transferred. Yeah. Indiana was like the only Power 4 offer he had. He went there. Didn't play much from what I remember. Went to Cincinnati, had an elite year this past year, and now goes for $5 million.
Wow. Yeah. It's good. It's good country. That's all I got to say about that. It's good country.
And that's my reminder that Rutgers has won, I think, 3 straight games against Indiana.
Yeah. Make it 4 in a row next year. All right. Do you want to do questions, since we have some football questions, and then get to basketball, or do you want to go to basketball and then go back to football and end with football? Or you want to just save all the basketball for the end?
For the sake of continuity and for keeping people watching the show, let's continue with football and get to basketball at the end.
That's a great idea. All right. So thanks for your questions on the Discord. We had a lot of good conversations about what's happening with NIL, which is just the dominant topic. And this was the theme, I think. A concern, a theme. And this sums it up. If we have more NIL, why is Greg Schiano still shopping at the dollar store? And the sense being, all right, well, I thought we had the money. The Rutgers was going to be able to go out and compete at the highest level of the portal. And you see Villanova, you see Toledo, you see Maine. What do you think?
I understand, right? I think highest level is ambitious, right? Rutgers has more money than it ever has. It's ever had, right? You also have to consider Rutgers had almost no money, so anything really would be an upgrade. And this is the highest level. Texas Tech spent $5 million on a quarterback. It spent $7 million on its defensive line last year. That is half of what Rutgers got in NIL, above the cap NIL, right? At best, from what we understand. Uh-huh. So Rutgers is not going to be at that level. Now, I understand wanting to be at a higher level and competing with the mid-tier teams in the Power 4. What I would say is I think there are these guys that they've gotten in the last 3 or 4 days outside the quarterback again are not going to be the best transfers they have. But these are guys they identified early, guys they felt like they can get, guys they feel like fit needs, and whether they play a big role or small role this year will fill in needs they have, and that there's they've gotten 4 guys. I anticipate they'll get into the double digits in transfers. Let's wait until the end of the portal haul before we assess all of this. I know it's a day-by-day thing, hour-by-hour thing, but you can't really have a big picture on how much the money they stretched, how far they stretched the money until you know what they spent it on, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, and let's not forget they kept one of the best receivers in the country, and I don't know what the number is, but I mean, if you told me 1.5 million, told me 2 million, somewhere between those two numbers, that's my guess. I'm just guessing what KJ Duff commanded on the open market. There's no question he's a 7-figure player. I could take that to the bank. Texas A&M wanted him. Notre Dame was poking around. I mean, What can I tell you? That is a win. That is a win on two levels. It's a win on NIL. You had the money. You came up with the resources necessary to keep him, and also, a win in your culture, in the faith in your coaching staff to develop him in the whole thing. And he likes it here clearly, because he would have left if he didn't. If he didn't like Greg Schiano, he wouldn't have mattered what the money was. He was going to get a big fat check somewhere. He got it here and he kept it. So before you say it's a dollar store shopping, you got to remember, that was not, the best player on your team is not a dollar store player, which is a good sign. And that, yeah. Go,
And
I was good.
what I would say is, like, the quarterback from Villanova, right? He was the first guy. This is not a one-to-one comparison, but think about like a guy like Eric Rogers, who came here from Northern Illinois. No one really knew who he was. And I mean, listen, he wasn't an all Big Ten quarterback or anything, but he was a more than serviceable starter for Rutgers for 2 years. I'm not saying he's going to be Eric Rogers, but I'm saying don't take the name of the school they're at face value and just think, okay, he's an FCS player. There have been players that Rutgers and other schools have added from other Power 4 schools that got to their new school and were not good, right? Just because a kid is at a Power 4 school now doesn't mean they're a Power 4 player. Just because they're an FCS school now doesn't mean they're not a Power 4 player, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. And that transitions to a good point about Kelly Zinn. Question raised. Let's talk about Kelly Zinn. You say she's put her mark on the Raymond and Duff negotiations. Where's this money coming from? And should that increase our expectations in the portal? Yeah, I mean, absolutely should increase your expectations. And I think there's no question that this is a lot of her doing, is the right word. I think it's I think it's a team effort, but it's finally, it's not just, it's not just the head coach and, the 3 or 4 trusted advisors around him scrounging out for money. And I think also the where it's coming thing is important too, because I think, Kelly Zinn has an understanding about how this universe works. And I think what we're seeing here clearly, based on $5 million for Texas Tech quarterback, clearly the numbers are out there. The above the cap money is going to grow. None of these programs are worried about the clearinghouse. None of these programs are worried about, how you're going to make this look. They're just doing deals. And that's part of what's happening here. And I think Rutgers is playing the game as best as Rutgers can, I mean, I think that's a very interesting part of this. Like, I don't know where all the money is coming from. Certainly a lot of corporate dollars, things are being shifted around. They're doing a better job of approaching, of asking people. And yeah, and I think that's a fascinating behind the scenes story with this team.
Yeah. I don't know where the money's coming from. I know they have more money than ever. I think they are more cautious than most programs, right? Like, I think Texas Tech and a lot of these other schools, like you said, are kind of they're daring the NCAA to do whatever they want, because the clearinghouse is toothless. Like, that's the truth. I have yet to see. I mean, there are thousands of kids in the portal, thousands of NIL deals being signed. I haven't heard of a single major deal being turned down by the clearinghouse. Like, it just doesn't happen, right? So I don't think that matters much, frankly, and I think Rutgers is doing a good job of navigating this so far, but the proof will be in the final portal haul and how it looks and how they play next fall. So all the money, they can raise all the money they want, but it's going to matter how they employ it.
2 questions that were fun. Assuming the Duff and Raymond deals indicate a strong influx of NIL money, should we expect to see more corporate sponsorships at games? The Ray Katina injury card, the NJ Transit train horn, love it. That ties into another one. Let's say I become a billionaire by franchising Ruts Hut across the nation. How much money do I need to give Rutgers to make them national championship contenders? Don't franchise Ruts Hut. That should be something you have to go to Clifton, New Jersey. Got to stand there at the counter. You've got to get your Frenchie with gravy right there. You should not be able to get that. And it doesn't work in San Diego, all right? So that first thing I'll say about that. Let's leave Ruts Hut to us. People who are here get it. And we need their digestive tracts completely ruined a couple of times a year from Ruts Hut. I don't know if there's going to be more sponsorships or not around I mean, it's hard to imagine there would be. Remember, these are deals with players. I'm sure there'll be some things. I think KJ Duff's going to be a fascinating first test of that.
Yes. Let's leave Ruts Hut and all the fine small businesses we have in New Jersey alone. Private equity has taken enough from us. Let us enjoy our small pleasure.
Has there been an episode you haven't railed against private equity since we've done this podcast? When was the last time?
Well, when's the last time private equity hasn't crawled into my life and made everything worse? You answer me that, Steve Politi. And the other part of the question is how much money? So let's assume Rutgers gives 80% of its $20.5 million to football. That's 16.5, right? So how much more than 16.5 would you need? I'd say probably 30 million would be a starting point, where you have a $46.5 million, $50 million roster. Like we're talking a lot of money, and the number's only going up when teams, again, like Texas Tech, if Oregon doesn't win the national championship this year, they're going to spend even more money, right? Like the desperation will continue egging this number up until, it'll reach a point where it's, teams aren't going to be spending $100 million per year on their roster, I think. But it's a big number. It's if you were a billionaire, you'd probably have to invest, a decent chunk of your annual derivatives on the Rutgers football team to have them competing for natty.
One more money question, because it's also an offensive line question, which I think is good. We're still looking at portal offensive linemen. We have something like 20 on scholarship. In the pay-to-play world, are they all getting something beyond scholarships? Clearly, many will never see the field. How do we think the $16 million is distributed? That's a really good question. I think certainly by starting position, by being in the two deep, I think everyone's getting something, but a lot of guys aren't getting much.
Everyone is getting something, yes, like to a certain extent. Right. And there are, I know walk-ons aren't really a thing anymore, but there's still walk-ons, right? Like there are some guys that are just on scholarship, but you get Alston money, or everyone's getting something. How is that allocated? That's all decided before the season, right? Like kids sign contracts and all that is negotiated and whatnot. The interesting thing on the offensive line is you're right. There's 20 guys, only 6 or 7 of them play in an ideal world. And the interesting calculus is always like, at what point do you not give up on a guy, but decide a guy is not developing to where he'll be a Big Ten offensive lineman, right? And at what point do the offensive linemen decide, all right, I'm not developing to the level I want. Let me go down a level so I can play, right? Because I won't play at Rutgers for a year or two. Like John Stone, he transferred down, and his list of visits were like Troy and Temple. Like he's more likely to play at those schools now and develop by playing. If he stayed at Rutgers, he's looking at least another year of developing in practice. At some point, you might be making money, but at some point you want to play, right? That's kind of why you're in college football. So it's an interesting, I think offensive line of all positions is probably the most interesting playing time, development, like discussions being had.
Right. All right. You mentioned Stone. Before we go to basketball, quick players have landed other places or visited other places. Can you quick rundown?
Yeah. Jacoby Henderson landed at Virginia. Right. Solid landing spot for him. Virginia has money too, right? Like they had a good year last year. Yeah. That's because they spent money and they have money.
Great campus, great school. Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Breaking news. Rutgers has just landed Cam Anthony, a tight end out of Ball State. Not sure how much he'll factor in this year. He did tear his Achilles during training last month. The expectation is he'll be back by training camp, but he had a decent year at Ball State last year. I think 7 catches for 117 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Cam with
Rutgers,
a K.
Cam with a K. Rutgers does not really use tight ends much in the passing game, as we've learned. And I don't think that's because I don't expect Rutgers to get Rob Gronkowski this year and start throwing the ball.
7 receptions, 117 yards. So high, 16.7 average, 2 touchdowns. But yeah, he's not catching a lot of passes.
Correct. We'll have more on that on the site soon. But to go back to what we were talking about, Jacoby Henderson to UVA, Jordan Walker landed at Georgia Tech, which is a good landing spot. Totally. They're still a Power 4 school. He'll be part of a defensive line rotation, I'm assuming. And the most interesting one hasn't landed anywhere. We've talked about Ian Strong. He visited Cal, could visit Notre Dame at some point. But the most interesting to me is Bo Mascow, who visited Texas, is going to visit Ohio State. And I can't remember what other school I was told, but he's getting big time interest that, I knew he'd get some interest. I was not expecting.
No,
Texas
me neither.
Texas has Marco Orfei, who was the quarterback's coach here at Rutgers, coached him for a year. So there's that familiarity. Ohio State played against him. I don't think maybe he had a particularly good game that I didn't pay attention to, but I just would not have pegged him as an Ohio State level recruit when he left here.
Good for him. I mean, yeah, I thought they want, I mean, I know they want to keep him. Like he wasn't a guy they were like, see. You can leave the door open. You know, they certainly want to keep him. So maybe he's going up. Interesting.
They wanted to keep him, but not for the price he was asking.
Right.
I don't know if he's going to get the price he was asking at these other schools.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, do you want to be a starting cornerback at Rutgers and play a majority of the snaps and make whatever Rutgers was offering, or do you want to go to a bigger school, make maybe a little bit more money? I don't think he's going to reach the money he wanted. Make a little bit more money and play, be the third or fourth quarterback. Like, that's kind of a calculus you got to make. I don't know what's better for his career, but again, if you're good enough to play at Ohio State, you're going to make a decent chunk and change.
All right. 35 minutes, 26 seconds before we got the basketball. Good job by us. See how many times we can do this. There's not much more opportunities. But latest basketball they play tonight. So you probably listening to this before they play Oregon. Another chance. Oregon's not good, missing their best player. Another chance to win a game. I don't know. What's your sense from this one? And if they don't get this one, we can start looking at the schedule.
Yeah. Well, I hope, first of all, that people are listening to this on their way to the game, right? So
there you go.
And then once you park your car, go on YouTube, hit a like, hit a subscribe, do all that good stuff to help us. We were finally able to monetize the channel, which we appreciate.
Should we tell the readers? Should we tell the listeners what our first paycheck was?
I don't think we should. Let's keep that.
Why not? We're open. We're open with the people. We're just getting started, but it's exciting. We're monetizing it on YouTube, and we got a sizable chunk of money. $1787.
We got enough money that you and I could split a 20-piece McChicken if we really wanted to. So that'll be our next Rutgers Rant lunch planning meeting. We'll be at McDonald's. But anyway, yes, it's a big game in the sense that there's only so many of chances you have of a winnable game. Oregon is on the second game of a East Coast trip. Last year, Rutgers picked off a much better UCLA team on their second game of a East Coast trip and had Mick Cronin complaining about the travel, yada yada.
Right.
Oregon is it's a good spot for Rutgers there. Like you said, they're missing their best player. Well, their best player didn't play against Maryland. I don't know if it's confirmed that he's not playing tonight, but it sounds like he's not. All the conditions are there. You played maybe your best game of the year against Ohio State. All the conditions are there. If they don't win tonight, they have a reasonable chance against Northwestern a week from this Sunday at home. And then you probably don't have a winnable game on your schedule until February 15th against Maryland.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, just to go through it. So first you got at number 20 Illinois, loss. Northwestern, the game you mentioned there, I think they're 8-6. They'll still be favored by a couple points, even at the rack. Then it's at Wisconsin, at Iowa, Indiana, number 9 Michigan State, at number 24 USC, much better than people expected, at UCLA, versus number 13 Nebraska now. That's incredible. So that's the row of games before we'll see what Maryland looks like then. We'll see what Rutgers looks like then on February 15th. That's pretty amazing.
At this point, it's pretty indisputable that the 3 worst teams in the Big Ten are Rutgers, Penn State, and Maryland. Maryland is without their starting center, and they are abysmal. So you get through that gauntlet that you just mentioned. Starting February 15th, you play Maryland, at Penn State, at Minnesota, home against Washington, the Lathan Somerville game, though we'll see if Lathan Somerville is even still playing at that point. He's been buried so deep on the bench, I almost feel bad for the guy. Then at Maryland, at Michigan State versus Penn State.
You missed one. Yeah. There you go. I'm sorry. You got Washington. My bad. Yep.
So I would say that of that, there's 4 winnable games, obviously, and Maryland, Penn State twice. Minnesota is probably winnable. You're not going to beat Michigan State, I don't think. And Washington is accessible. Now the question is, though, if you get to February 15th against Penn State and you have lost, let me do the math here. You would have lost, if you don't beat Oregon and Northwestern, you would have lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games in a row. And you'd be 0-13 in the Big Ten, something like that. Is there any motivation left? Like, are you at a point where Are you
Well, yeah.
beyond the point of no return?
I just saw the Giants win two straight after going 2-13 with absolutely nothing to play for. So yeah, I think there's always a motivation. There's always you get on the court, you want to win. I think that's underrated in that sense. But are they capable? That's the bigger question. And what will this team look like then? That's another thing that I wonder about. And you asked a really good question, and I think it's worth bringing up again, just people who didn't watch our YouTube video when we talked about it. But, the idea that Steve Peichel is seriously considering and looking at midseason transfers, made a joke of it to you when you asked him about it. But, I don't know where that stands. I don't know what the odds are that Rutgers will be able to reel in someone midseason, but that just says a lot about where this thing is, Brian. To me, and I get it. Baylor's doing it. It's the kind of the talk of college basketball now. I mean, the NCAA had to come out and say we will not approve a transfer for an NBA player. Oh, really? Okay, it was just kind of one of these remarkable moments where the sport's so out of control. When it comes across your Twitter feed, you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know. Yeah, it's just that we have to say that. It's just that's where we're at now. Oh, LeBron James is not going to be able to come to play at Rutgers next year. It's good to know. But yeah, I mean, it speaks to also just where this program's at, and it's wild.
The thing is, if they do add a midseason guy, I'm not convinced he'll become the best player on the team. Is a 25-year-old Kyrie Walker who's putting up pedestrian numbers in the Mongolian second division really going to be the solution to this team, right? He's older, right? But so is Emmanuel Bole. He'd be the same age as Emmanuel Bole. And we know that age isn't going to be the reason you're a good college basketball player. I don't think that even if they do add a player, I'm not sure if they will or not, right? The only name I've heard is Kyrie Walker. You'd think that at some point, considering these guys have to enroll in classes, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen soon, right? In theory, they still have to go to class. But I don't think that's going to be the make or break. I think the solution for the season to give themselves a chance going forward is to find the players that give you the best chance, right? And finally figure out what the rotation is, right? And stick to it because they've been bouncing all over the place. And I think that you got to give over the next couple in this insurmountable stretch, right? Where you're probably not going to win a game that we just read off. Give Caden Powers extended minutes. Give Lino Mark and Chris Dooley some time to just figure it out on the court. And look, if you lose by 10 or if you lose by 30, does it really matter? So that when you get to that last stretch, you're at a point where you can string together some wins, and then what you're working with when you enter the transfer portal season. Like, how badly do you want these guys to come back? Who are the ones you want to fight for and reserve money for? It's very weird to talk about it this way in college sports. I know we should be numb to it by now, but that's kind of where you're at. Figure out who are your best players, who gives you the best future. And if I were Steve Peichel today, I would give Lino Mark, Chris Dooley, and Caden Powers more minutes than Harun Zerno and Dennis Badelau because I've just not seen anything from those two guys to warrant much playing time.
Right. Yeah. And for me, Tariq Francis and Dylan Grant, they're your guys. They've got to be out there. And I know it's amazing that we got to this point, but I think those two, I don't have an answer for how you play in the Big Ten with the centers they've got. I think you've got to keep rolling with Obole. Obviously, the option that there's no other guy on the team. It's sort of there's just a dilemma with building this rotation. But I am 100% with you on what I've seen from Caden Powers. If someone pointed out he's only shooting 20-something%, of course he is. If he was same with Marks, he hasn't been able to hit a jump shot. I mean, if they could do that, they'd be someplace else, right? You got to see what they've got. You've got to roll with it. You've got to give. We go back to that proof of concept with this Rutgers team. Let's get to the end of this year. If it's 3-17, if it's 4-16, if it's something, if it's a number like that, and you can say, well, look at Caden Powers. Look what he looks like when he started compared to now. Look at Norley. Look what he looks like when he started now. These guys, I don't know. I'm grasping at straws, clearly.
Yes, and we're all throwing stuff against the wall, hoping it sticks, right? I'm sure Steve Peichel has thought of every possible solution. I just don't know if there are many of them. But maybe a full court press and just try to force a ton of turnovers, right? Because they're giving up a lot of easy baskets, right? So what's the difference between giving up an easy basket because you're pressing 94 feet versus giving up an easy basket because you guys don't know how to defend a pick and roll, and all of a sudden the center is wide open for a dunk because of one extra pass, right? So I don't know. I will say though, So the big thing here obviously is getting one Big Ten win. So you're not the first Big Ten team like since 2000 to not get a Big Ten win.
They're gonna win
But
one game. They're gonna
once
win one game.
You got to get it right. You say that they're going to get a win. They're going to get a win until we get to the 20th game, and it's like, all right, is it going to be now? Or I agree that they're going to win one, but my point being, that's the big goal. Get a Big Ten win. Get that monkey off your back. Right.
Right.
After that, is there really that big a difference between going 1-19 and 4-16?
I mean, I guess not. I don't know. You dead last versus tie for 15th. I don't know.
Dead last versus dead last,
maybe. I mean, 1-19 is pretty grim. That is a long winter, but I see your point. I understand what you're saying. Like you would certainly, if the choice is those two and playing guys who aren't going to be here next year versus trying to get some kind of level of development future. Yeah, maybe you're right.
The season is lost. I mean, it's been lost since December, right? There's nothing really to play for outside of pride, obviously, right? But I don't know. Again, to me, the last thing this season that matters is winning a Big Ten game. You have 17 more shots. You win at least one. I think from there, and it's pretty grim to put it in these terms, but from there, it's house money, in my opinion.
That is pretty grim. Yeah, that's rough. Huh? All right, guys, Positivity Podcast once again.
We'll end on a positive note. Gymnastics had its first meet of the season yesterday, and they had their best season opening score in program history.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Okay, there you go.
The athletic director was there, and it wasn't weird, so that's good. Less positive, women's basketball did not had lost again. We didn't talk about it last time. Let me look it up, but we didn't talk about it last time. They blew a huge lead to Wisconsin. They lost by 22 points to Ohio State, and now they play number 7 Maryland on Thursday.
Okay.
Their record is they are 8-7 overall and 0-4 in the Big Ten. Another program where it's just like one Big Ten win, and you have
what's the bottom half of the women's Big Ten look like? Are there as many opportunities for them as there are for the men?
Let me go to Bart Torvik's women's. Okay, so Rutgers is by far the worst team in the Big Ten. Actually, that's not true. I just lied to you. The worst team in the Big Ten by far is Northwestern.
Oh.
They're 149th nationally. They have a horrendous defense. And then you have beatable teams in, it looks like, Wisconsin, which Rutgers.
What is Rutgers? What is Rutgers in?
So Rutgers in Bart Torvik's women's rankings is 125th. Northwestern is 149th.
Okay. They play
Wisconsin,
each other, I presume.
Let's see if Rutgers does play Northwestern. I believe so.
Okay.
Rutgers plays Northwestern once on the road this Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Big one. And then they play at Penn State. So that's a 2-game stretch where you can get a win. And then Indiana is beatable. Purdue looks like it's beatable. So there are some opportunities there. But again, Wisconsin was a major chance. They were up 20 points at some point, I think.
That's
and
wild.
They blew it.
Yeah.
So I think Kelly's first major test, as we've said many times, is going to be both basketball programs. Like that's going to be a true early test of her leadership and whether she's able to resurrect these programs that have shown success in the past and have been struggling since.
Yeah. All right. Fascinating stuff on the banks. Any other portal news happen while we were sitting here talking about basketball? No.
So again, just to refresh, Rutgers has gotten 5 transfer signees. They got a quarterback, which we've talked about. They got a tight end in Cam Anthony, who's probably going to be. They're probably going to get 2 tight ends. He'll probably be the secondary tight end. They got a quarterback from Villanova. They got a defensive end from Toledo, and they got a defensive tackle from Maine.
All right. I want you to make 2 predictions. Two predictions. The first prediction is when we're sitting here talking about this on Monday, how many portal players will we have to talk about?
A week from today, you're saying?
Yes, a week from today.
I would guess they'd have at least another handful. I will set the over-under on 10.5 total transfers. How many do you think they have?
Total transfers. They have 5 now, so I would take the over on that. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd probably take the over, slightly over, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. That's prediction number one. Prediction number two: who will be playing in the national championship game?
Very interesting. I think the Indiana-Oregon game is a de facto championship game. I think those two teams are better than the other two. I think the most interesting Rutgers angle is Miami, given that Corey Heatherman is there, Monterey is there, Mario Cristobal, the man who could have been the Rutgers coach after Greg Schiano if they had not botched that whole thing. Can you imagine what would have happened? That's a big what if. Add that to the list of what ifs in Rutgers history. Obviously, he's not Mario Cristobal.
It's low on the list, but it's on the list. Yeah, yeah.
It's not Mario Cristobal of today. Obviously, it was 12 years ago, but you see what the guy's doing now. You see what could have been. Yeah. So to answer your question, I think it'll be Indiana, Ole Miss, and I'll take Indiana. What about you?
Yeah, I think you're right. And only because I'm in some cockamamie poll where if Oregon wins, I win money. So that's all you need to know. Book Indiana for that reason alone. Although I think both of those matchups with Miami are like Rutgers interesting because obviously we saw what Oregon did to Rutgers last year offensively. But yeah, for me, Indiana, and I'm right about this week. It is just fascinating to think back. It's 2 years ago, right? I mean, think about that. We're sitting there in Bloomington, and if you looked at those two programs and you were trying to chart a course for what would happen for either, you would not have bet a nickel on Indiana being like decent. Forget this. It's just incredible. It really is one of the more incredible stories in recent college sports history. That
was the day Rutgers clinched its first bowl game in like 9 years. Gavin Wimsatt galloping through
39 passing yards and 200 on the ground or something crazy. It's wild. Yeah.
Correct. He had more yards on the ground in that one run than he did in passing the whole game in front of a maybe quarter-filled Memorial Stadium. Right. Now that place probably has a waiting list for season tickets. They got them winning the Rose Bowl. I mean, it's remarkable, and it's hard to put into context. Like Indiana was the losingest program in college sports, in college football history. Like we think Rutgers loses a lot of games. Indiana lost more games than Rutgers, and they started after Rutgers. It's remarkable, and they sucked for so long. They sucked really badly for so long, and now. They hadn't won a bowl game. What was the stat? They hadn't won a bowl game in like 20 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Or 40 years.
Amazing. The whole thing is amazing. Yep. A basketball school. The other part of it, right? Like they didn't care. Like you can say they weren't good at it because they really weren't investing in it. Yeah. It's just wild. So.
And they're good at basketball still too.
Yep.
Something worth noting.
They must be having some good, interesting podcasts in Indiana. But we're doing the best we can.
We're doing what we can, and I know people listening to this are just punching their rearview windows or whatever's in front of them, telling us to stop talking about Indiana. Please, God, I don't want to hear about this anymore. Because it's got to feel like it could have been us, right? Rutgers fans have to be thinking that. Could have been us.
Yep, a couple of shrimp cocktails away. You'd still be in Indianapolis, though, so keep that in mind. All right, New Jersey folks. On that positive note, New Jersey, yes! Let's wrap it up there. We'll be back in a week. Talk more portal, maybe talk basketball. Who the hell knows? Thanks for listening.